kind of, we have to do this with an R drone. But okay, so I'm going to unfortunately going to have to whiz through some of my slides. Too many slides as usual. I've always had this problem. So something I just mentioned in the sort of previous slide, one of the things that we're very much focusing on in terms of this project is trying to prove the value that local developers bring to institutions. There's a diagram there which I'll kind of summarize just in a sentence. Essentially, what we are arguing is that local developers, i.e. developers working with institutions, are best placed to take advantage of external services because they understand the local context. That's kind of in a line, but there's a bit more I probably would add to that. There's a number of assumptions. We believe that having local institutional developers is a valuable resource in an institution, and maybe a lot of institutions aren't taking full advantage of that. We also feel that having a developer community to support that is a valuable thing because a lot of developers are isolated in some of the institutions they work in. So over the sort of year, 18 months, we've kind of developed quite an expanded list of contacts, developers within UK higher education, further education. We've got over 3,500 names that we sort of on our database. We believe also that, this is kind of maybe an issue that came up yesterday, that the skills of developers are undervalued by researchers, and they're becoming increasingly more important. And we've noticed that there are lots of researchers who are becoming developers or do development. One of the things we've had to do is we've tried to look at the cost of training. A lot of the training we do is peer-to-peer training, so peers giving up their own time. And we've actually got some hard figures to actually show that the training that we deliver is much, much cheaper than going commercial. And so a lot of the events kind of, in terms of value for money, pay for themselves. Tick. Okay, I'm just going to quickly just summarize some of the work that we're doing this year is also looking at kind of testing some of the assumptions we've made in the first year. So what we did was we conducted a large survey with various stakeholders, developers, obviously, their managers, senior IT managers, vendors, funders, users, who include academics, librarians, researchers, and we tested a number of assumptions behind the project. And what we found was there was huge agreement, not just obviously with developers, but with other stakeholders, that local developers understand the local context, they can act as a bridge between remote service providers and open source communities and local end users. There was a strong belief that local developers work closely with end users, not all the time, most of the time. There was a strong view that this should be shared across the sector, the things that have been learned. There's a huge disparity in the idea that developers actually, stakeholders actually understand the value of developers. Obviously that comes a lot from developers, but actually some of the other stakeholders as well. There's also a feeling that developers feel undervalued. They don't have any lack sort of professional development, career opportunities. They're on short-term contracts. They talk about being managed very poorly, managers not understanding their culture, not feeling valued. I mean, you could argue that with lots of different communities. Obviously, some of the barriers to innovation, what we found is if people are given a mental space and a physical space to actually innovate, that makes a huge difference. And there are a number of institutions that have done that. And we've got some demonstrable sort of evidence that that works. And there's a big demand. There seems to be a big demand for actually having a sort of sector-wide developer community and also raising the profile of developers. Very quickly, I'm going to just quickly whiz through some of this. We have a mailing list. One of the things we're looking at is working with commercial organizations. So a lot of our events are sponsored by commercial outfits. That's all I'm going to say about that. And obviously that's kind of, we're looking at that in terms of long-term sustainability of what we're doing. And there's just a couple of things I want to finish on. we're hoping to have at least 10 case studies. We had about 120 responses from our survey that people actually gave stories of developer impact. We've narrowed them down to about 50, and we're hoping eventually we'll have 10 quite sort of detailed case studies to actually demonstrate the value of having local developers. We're also working on a few small projects on actual metrics and measuring the actual value of local development, i.e. pounds and pence. And the final thing is we're working on an idea of a UK academic developer register. And that is sort of UK-wide developer register. Developers put their profiles on there, the kind of skills they've got, the technologies that they have expertise in. And some of the ideas are, for example, the idea of possible secondments between universities, in terms of universities' technology expertise in technology X and University Y hasn't got it, and a sort of swap, and about professional development. Phase 3, question mark, we don't know what's happening yet. We're hoping that we're putting a case towards the JISC for continuing our work. If you want to know any more information, please contact me. Thank you. Sorry, I've overrun. Okay.
So are there any questions for Mahendra? No questions?
Okay.
So I'll just pick up, as clearly I've been kind of listening intently, I'm going to pick up on the very last point that you got up there about the sort of developer register and skills profiles and so on. One of the things that came up in the discussion, I think before you arrived yesterday, was that it looked like there was a need for this. It was useful to be able to get in local developer expertise into projects, but it was quite difficult to actually do that because of the administrative
contractual
systems. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts as to how to make that easier so that something like this could be of benefit not just to developers but also to the people looking to hire in developers for short term?
Well, I mean, I think it's quite a sort of difficult issue. We had a discussion at this at Dev 8D, and it doesn't seem as if institutions have the same contracts. Oxford, for example, have a contract with their developers. Anybody from Oxford here? Are you a developer at Oxford? Okay.
But I was about to follow up on the fact that we have paid us, we can very easily hire developers, and in fact, I am hiring a developer on one of my projects temporarily for.
From another institution?
He's from an externally.
Yeah, so that's what came up. It's relatively easy to hire someone from an external company, but the idea of doing secondments is actually quite hard in current climate.
I mean, I think there are all sorts of issues about intellectual property. So it's, what would be the issue about that, and also flexibility of contracts. So I think what we were going to do was kind of maybe identify a couple of case studies where some institutions have got that flexibility in their contracts to show the value of doing that. But Oxford is an example that does that, as far as I know.
What does the 8D stand for in Dev 8D?
Sorry?
What does the 8D?
Oh, right, okay. Right, okay, this is very, let me just, if I can get those. Okay, so Dev 8D, okay. Dev 8D came from the very first Dev 8D, which is actually stood for developer happiness. So the 8 are glasses, and the capital D is a wide smile. I don't know if you can see that. That's where it came from. So the event the event is all about keeping developers happy. There's lots of sugar, lots of caffeine, lots of sweeties, lots of fun, lots of play, lots of sort of creative thinking, and so that's why.